From KGW News, this is Straight Talk with Laurel Porter.
Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Laurel Porter. It seems nearly everywhere you look in the Portland area, you can see the heavy toll the pandemic has taken on Portland's houseless residents. The pandemic has led to a humanitarian crisis, leaving many without sufficient shelter, food, sanitation, and services. The city's promised help is on the way in the form of 6 organized legal camps dubbed Safe Rest Villages throughout the city. Housing Commissioner Dan Ryan announced the plan in June and has said the city's on track to open the villages by the end of the year. Here to give us more details on what the villages will include, how they'll work, and where they'll be located, I'm pleased to welcome our guest, Portland City Commissioner Dan Ryan. Welcome back to Straight Talk, Commissioner. It's always nice to have you here.
It's great to see you, Laurel. I'm excited to do some straight talk with you.
Great. Well, Commissioner, this plan, as you know, is highly anticipated. How would you describe the homeless crisis in the city right now? How much are these villages needed?
Portlanders are well aware we're experiencing a humanitarian crisis. You could see it with your own eyes everywhere you go. And that is why, since I've been in office in the last year, I really challenged government officials and other entities to come together to really focus on what was missing in the continuum. Yes, housing, permanent housing is very necessary, but we really had to break between those who were suffering on our streets and not able to get into that permanent housing. And so that's why we promoted Safe Rest Villages. It's really important to remember what this concept is. It's not tents. It's not just organizing a bunch of unsanctioned tents. It's actually moving people into shelters, into temporary shelters within a regulated, secure space called the village. And in that, they will have sanitation services, hygiene services, security, and then also, most importantly, we'll be able to make connection with case managers and behavioral health specialists, mental health specialists.
There has been some concern about the timeline. Are you still on track to open them, all of them, by the end of this year?
Yeah, I set a high bar. That's just how I was built. And so when when we were able to pass the legislation in June and just were able to leverage the money just 2 months ago, I didn't want to change the goal. I wanted to make sure that we stayed focused on the goal. And the goal is to get these built. And I'm really pleased to announce that today we will be able to announce the first, and then we'll have more to come. We're just getting started.
All
and
right.
If you'd like, I can tell you where a few of those are located. It's a good time to do
yes,
that.
a lot of people want to know. I know we're taping this so folks know on Thursday morning. You're holding a news conference later today, Thursday afternoon, to announce those locations. But we're the first ones to hear them. Drum roll, please. What can you tell us? Where will these 3 first ones be located?
Yeah, well, first, hats off to the city's Safe Rest Village team. We were able to hire that team of 4 within 2 months, which is pretty much a record in City Hall. The first one will be out at Menlo Park. It's a park and ride. It's 122nd and Burnside. And I want to really give a lot of attention and thanks to TriMet as our partner. The next one will be down on 2300 block of Southwest NATO Parkway. And that I really want to give kudos to our partners at ODOT and also at the Portland's Bureau of Transportation, and specifically Commissioner Hardesty, who oversees that bureau. And the third that we can announce today is at Southeast 45th and Harney. And that's just off the Springwater corridor. And it's Commissioner Maps oversees the Bureau of Environmental Services. And so we're just getting started, and there'll be more to come.
So we have the Hazelwood neighborhood, the one over on East Burnside. We have the Brentwood Darlington neighborhood on the 45th Avenue, one in Southeast, and then NATO Parkway in downtown Portland. Why these locations?
These locations were selected. 1, we wanted to make sure we had geographic reach. And 2, we wanted to make sure we were meeting the houseless residents where they are. And so what we want to change is having unsanctioned camping by our houseless community out on our streets in the public right of way, where they can be moved and relocated to these villages. And that, I think most neighbors will see that would be a vast improvement to what they're experiencing in their neighborhood today. We want to include the neighbors in this process. We want them to be the first ones to see the evolution of the village, and we hope that many of them will be volunteers. We also need to make a commitment to those neighborhoods that our impact reduction team will really be focused on these areas to keep the surrounding area safe and secure. So I really do think it'll be a value added for those neighbors who are experiencing unhoused, unsanctioned camping, which is causing environmental damage as well to our city, as well as people that really just need services.
You said that you would encourage people to move to these villages. How will you encourage people who are homeless to move to one of these 3 villages now and 3 later?
Yeah, our navigation team through the Joint Office is very skilled at doing that type of communication, and we've heard from the houseless community that this is something, an on-ramp that they would be able to receive. Many do not want to be in traditional congregate shelters in a church basement and bunk beds. They like having their own little private pod, if you will, and then yet still having that connection. When you're suffering through behavioral health and mental health, one of the biggest focuses one must look at is how you can have connection with community and also connection with those who are skilled to serve you. And that will build the trust that they need.
How tough has this process been, Commissioner, and when do you think we'll know the locations for the rest of the other 3 locations?
Yeah, it's been difficult, and when I decided to run for this position, I was one of those Portlanders that was frustrated and actually getting kind of angry with my hometown, just suffering through the lingering crisis. And this was before COVID, and so I really just think that it's important for us to get moving. And I will say that I wanted to acknowledge the partners earlier, and there's more to announce. But we have to act with some urgency. Stalling's not in my repertoire. So I'm really just encouraged that the team that we've built, the city's Safe Dress Village team, it's not in theirs either. So we think that through osmosis, others will get the let out and come along with us.
Do you have a time frame for when you'll announce the remaining 3?
Yeah, I have a tendency to just say this is the goal, and we're going to stay focused on that goal, and we're going to do our best to get these open by the end of the year. And if we don't meet that goal, we'll just keep getting back up and keep pursuing. But government needs to be more accountable to the people in our city, and we need to set goals. Even if we don't meet them, we need to be accountable to them and then keep pursuing. So that was on me to say that, to have that high bar and stay focused on the prize and get the goal set.
So no exact date to announce the remaining 3, just want to get them out there before the end of the year. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Well, what I'm saying is that it's been challenging to get these agreements written up, and I will say that many have been moving. I'd say we had about 10 balls in the air just about a week ago, and so I know that we should have a few more to announce soon.
There has been discussion of a village for people who live in RVs or cars, possibly at the Expo Center. What's the status of that?
That's been delayed. We've been in communication with Metro since February, many conversations. They have an 11-acre parking lot, and we weren't offered any of the paved parking lot. We were offered a grassy ditch area that's off the parking lot, and unfortunately that would take $1.5 million to redevelop that space. So we're hoping that Metro will stay at the table and offer something that we could put together.
What about the people who don't want to go to these villages? Would people be required to leave unsanctioned camps?
You're asking the million-dollar question. There is a challenge with many on our streets refusing service, and there's a whole host of complex reasons for that. And there's also some in the houseless provider community who have some fear about working with some of those on the streets. So that's a very long conversation that we have to be honest about. And I just know that my job in my lane was to get busy on focusing on some solutions, and this is part of the solution. So we needed to start with this, and then we will also stay focused on relocating the best we can. But we'll have to look at what that means as we go forward.
Well, advocates for people who are homeless are concerned about how that might be enforced. They're concerned this will lead to more aggressive sweeps of camps. Will it?
Yeah, I don't really buy into the sweep or no sweep. I think this is about love. And yeah, it might sound like tough love, but we need to meet the houseless community on the streets. I've talked to many houseless people that are thanking me for pursuing this endeavor. They want rules. Many want rules. Many want security. Many want to feel safe. And so I do believe that a lot of our houseless community will welcome this. And I also think those are the same ones that will go on their own resilience path, and they'll be much more successful once they're in permanent housing. We need to improve the sustained rate of people staying in permanent housing once they're inside. And we know that with proper mental health and behavioral health wraparound services, which the voters passed in the Here Together measure. And this is all lined up to come together.
And Commissioner, will this be low barrier, the villages accepting of people with pets or regardless of conditions?
Most of them start with an on-ramp that's low barrier, but with expectation to continue to build that resilience and go more towards high bar. And that will actually then be a better indicator that once they're housed, they'll be able to stay housed and get back into the workforce. And who says they won't be homeowners someday?
Scott Kerman, the executive director of Blanchet House in Old Town, was a guest last week here on Straight Talk. We talked about the villages. He supports them, but he and his team work with a lot of folks who might not feel these villages are for them. And he wants to make sure they're not forgotten. Let's listen to what Scott Kerman had to say.
We appreciate that we're advocating for those people in our community. We want to make sure that they're not forgotten or left out. And we want to make sure that we have the resources and the support that we need to safely and effectively provide them services, because they are literally fighting for their survival.
What can you tell Scott Kerman and the people he serves about resources for them?
I think we're all in this together. I think that this is really complex, and I was happy to hear that Scott is highly supportive of the villages. I think we have to play this out. It's just the beginning, and then we'll go from there. But staying with the status quo was not acceptable. And I look forward to always partnering with Scott and the good people at Blanchet House. And I gotta give them a lot of kudos for providing services throughout the pandemic. They never missed a beat.
The city first declared the homeless situation an emergency under Mayor Hales back in September of 2015. It has been 6 years. It's only gotten worse, not better. And a lot of folks wonder what has taken the city so long to come up with a workable solution. How do you explain that? What have you learned since you have taken office?
I think everyone was very focused on a very aspirational goal, which should never be taken off the table, which is housing first. I think it was important to knit this into that system. And that is why I was advocating for a humanitarian response to what continues to get worse, as you said. And so I think that the and of the improved village concept, shelter concept with services will help us actually improve the results that we need once we get more permanent housing on board. So I believe what I've done in my 1 year in office is shake up the system so that we can actually improve it by adding this to the on-ramp.
For our viewers and listeners, if you want to dig a little bit deeper into what the villages are all about, take a look at those 3 locations we've been talking about. There is a new website you can check out. This is the web address, portland.gov/ryan/safe-rest-villages. You see it there. And you can send in your comments to this email address at saferestvillages@portlandoregon.gov. Another crisis facing the city of Portland is an epidemic of gun violence. Why isn't the city doing more to stop it? We'll ask Commissioner Ryan when we come back. Welcome back to Straight Talk. I'm Laurel Porter. The city of Portland is experiencing a record number of homicides and shootings. The mayor has called it a pandemic of gun violence. A 9-year-old girl even addressed the city council last week, pleading with city leaders to do more.
It was my turn to bat when I saw them pull out guns and start shooting. We ducked behind it for less than 2 seconds, and as I was getting up to run farther away, a bullet shot about 4 to 5 feet to my right. I want to feel safe, and I don't want to be suspecting that everyone is bad or a criminal.
What is the City Council doing about this? Once again, welcome to my guest, Commissioner Dan Ryan. Thanks again for being here, Commissioner.
Welcome. Yeah,
it's a really tough issue.
Yeah.
Pretty powerful to hear from a little girl and how close bullets came to her when she was out playing in a park. You know, it seems like nearly every day we're reporting on more shootings around the city. I think we're up to 925 or more so far this year. How do you feel about what you see happening in your city?
Yeah, that testimony was gripping, and we all get messages from people that we love that have been in close fire as well. And so it's on the hearts and minds of all of us. And it really is important that we take some more action. And so, this is a national epidemic, but Portland's near the top. I think I just saw the report where it was Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and then Portland, number 2 in terms of the spike over this past year. So there's several things that we're working on. We have the fall adjustment to our budget coming up. It's called the fall bump. And it's at the end of the first quarter we can look at where we can repurpose some investments on with our budget. And I know the focus will definitely be on community safety. Several things. One will be to take the Portland street response. Now that it's been in operation for 6 months and we have a report coming out, we can look at what we were hoping to look at back in May, but it was delayed. The program was delayed. So of course this has been delayed. So now we'll be able to amp that up and make it expand throughout the city. And I'm looking forward to being a part of that team that expands that. The second is there's discussions about adding more police officers, and there's been discussions about bringing back retired police officers. I definitely want us to hire more officers. I would like us to look into some of the younger officers that were more diverse in the police force that left the city. I'd love to try to get some of them back. I want to have officers that we can deploy on the street and that can really work with the community. I was working with Commissioner Rubio back in April when we passed the community investments to engage nonprofits in this solution, because we need those communities that are closest to the victims of gun violence to be a part of the system. And when I look at places like Camden, New Jersey, where their clearance rate for solving crimes is really high, much higher than anywhere else, their gun violence has gone down. And that's because there's trust between the communities that are impacted and the police force. So I want to make sure that we hire and rehire people that are really focused on that type of community policing on the ground.
Well, the Oregonian was pretty harsh in its criticism of the city council on this issue. The Oregonian editorial board wrote last week, the gulf between what's being discussed at Portland City Council tables and what's playing out in Portland neighborhoods could not be more apparent or disturbing. The council's long-term vision does not excuse its short-term sluggishness in facing this urgent, unyielding epidemic of violence. Commissioner, you've talked about some ideas. Why aren't you and the council moving with more urgency? Do you think you're doing enough, quickly enough?
I think if we would deliver a comprehensive package in the fall bump in October, that's really starting tomorrow. That will definitely make it mission critical that we're focused on the present gripping situation. So I do believe that the action that you will see over the next month will be pleasing to the views in that editorial.
In a guest editorial in the Oregonian recently, Commissioner Mingus Mapps pointed out, and going back to the number of police officers, currently the Portland Police minimum staffing model recommends 1,100 police officers. Today, Portland employs only 793 police officers. Do you agree the Portland Police Bureau is understaffed? And when you talk about hiring more officers, are you willing to add officers to those recommended staffing levels?
I want us to start by getting up to the levels that are in the budget. So we also have a gap between how many are that we have budgeted for and how many don't exist. So we have a retention challenge. We also have a up and running training challenge because of COVID. It set back some of the training logistics that take place down in Salem. We, as a system, have to be more nimble. So once someone is hired, they can get on the streets much sooner than they are.
5 months ago, you and your fellow commissioners refused to fund Mayor Ted Wheeler's plan for reviving a gun violence specialty police unit, instead voting to earmark millions for nonprofits and unarmed park rangers. Now looking at the surge in gun violence, was that the right move?
I really think it's foundational. If you don't have a new approach and if you don't put in reforms, then you're not really listening to the people on the streets, but also listening to the communities that are most impacted. I think that investment was necessary, and I do believe it was the first step, and now it's time to add more officers to work with those that are engaged in the community.
Commissioner Mapps also said that Portland has a gang problem. He wrote about it in the Oregonian. He said, Portland has a gang problem. Anti-police rhetoric has given way to a feeling of lawlessness, and criminals are filling the void. Would you agree with that? Is there a gang problem?
Yes, there's been a gang problem for years, but it's escalating of late. And what we just need to make sure that we stay focused on hiring more police officers, on working with the community groups that that were part of the investments in April. And we got to get rid of this rhetoric of us versus them. We need to come together and focus on saving lives and allowing people to feel like they can be free to roam our streets, to roam our parks. We have people that are prisoners in their own home, whether it's in Old Town or in East Portland, and even in my neighborhood in North Portland. And so Portland needs these investments, and we need to come together and be a part of the same community.
And talking about coming together, morale among officers is at an all-time low. Do you think the pendulum may have swung too far away from supporting officers, that they need support, they feel like the city doesn't have their back?
I think that we had a reckoning that was necessary. I think that police brutality needed to be called out and it needed to be understood by the majority of the population. It's now time to continue to implement the training that will allow our officers to be more connected to the community on the ground, and we need to see one another as part of the same fabric. So I believe that it's just time to cooperate and work together.
You won in a special election last year to fill the remainder of the late Nick Fish's term. So your term ends already at the end of next year, and you'll be up for re-election with the primary coming up in May. As we all know, it has been a really tough year. Will you run again?
Well, that was a tough decision to make, actually. It was a tough year, and I knew it would be. But I would say that the attacks at my home personally, to my spouse and I, and even more importantly, to the neighbors on my block, 4 of my closest neighbors are refugees that fled violence, political violence in their own countries. And to experience that political violence on their own block was rough. So I feel like I had to check it out with the rest of the block as well. But I am just getting started. I love my city. I'm going to swing hard for her. She's in a lot of pain right now. And this hometown boy is ready to have a full term so I can really get more results for this city that I love.
So is this your first official re-election announcement here on KGW Straight Talk that you're running again?
Yeah, it's no secret that I'm forming the campaign, but really my re-election is about staying focused on my job and moving the work and getting results for the city of Portland. I don't know why you'd want to get rid of somebody that's productive at a time where we need results.
So this is an announcement not just by you, but by your neighborhood. Did everybody say, okay, we're for you, go for it again?
I did have to check in with a few, yeah, and they assured me that they have my back. So, but most importantly, I had to make sure that my spouse was all in.
And so why do you want to run again after all that you've talked about what happened at your house and your neighborhood and how tough it's been? Why do you want to do it again?
It's my deep love affair with the city of Portland. And when you're born and raised here and you're a 4th generation Oregonian and you see that the city that you love is being trashed nationally, you go to a meeting in Eugene and they're celebrating all of the openings of the campuses across the University of Oregon, but one, and that's in Old Town, not because of COVID, because people don't feel safe. I have to serve my city if it's the last thing I do while I'm alive. And so that's why I'm doing it. It's an honor to serve, and it's my duty to serve the city of Portland. Commissioner,
I sense this is pretty emotional for you to serve and to think about running again.
Yeah, I think this is not a time to serve to look good and build some fabulous political resume. It's a time for leaders to step up and to do good work. And I think I'm very equipped to do that. And so my 25 years of serving this community in the nonprofit space and executive space is really allowed me to be ready. It's allowed me to be the type of person that sets goals. And it's okay if you fall down, you get back up and you keep showing up daily to serve the city that you love. And boy, do we need those type of leaders. And I'm really grateful that the entire city council at this moment has our back. We're all together on building these villages. And that was something I do want to point out that's been very satisfying of late.
We have about 30 seconds left, but I know on a lighter note, you have some teams you're rooting for this weekend.
Yeah, so as a grad of University of Oregon, I'm pretty excited that we're ranked 3rd in the nation, but it's one game at a time. So we got to go down to the farm at Stanford and kick some butt. And then, I'm an old school Oregonian, so you root for both the Beavers and the Ducks until you play each other, of course. But that team from up north, the Dogs, the Huskies, are coming down to Corvallis, and they're gonna hopefully suffer a defeat to the Beavers this weekend.
Go Beavers, go Ducks. Thanks a lot,
Absolutely.
Commissioner. Always wonderful to have you here. And thank you for watching and listening. Remember, you can get Straight Talk as a podcast. Search for KGW Straight Talk. Join us next week when my guest is a young climate activist who's been called Oregon's Greta Thunberg. Hear how she's rallying local youth to demand state leaders take stronger action against climate change. We'll see you next week for Straight Talk.